good. So, and we have a lot to get through today. I think one of our working agreements ought to be, if you want to speak, raise your hand. Amy and I will try to keep a list in order of when we see hands and then call on you so that we don't talk over each other, which is hard to do, I know. And that's the one disadvantage to Zoom. It's not like being in a room where you can actually see people getting anxious to speak. I see somebody's cute little dog.
She's decided to join us.
Yeah, mine usually does too, but I'm at the office, so he can't, which is good. Otherwise, he'd be in my lap. I know Liz is going to be late. I'm just going to see if we've got, I can see who's here.
Looks like we got a little one joining us too.
Yeah, we already had a chat about how cute.
Little one in training.
Yeah, she's
going
to be civically engaged, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, Amy, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, it's 4:06. I think we should get rolling. Welcome, everybody. It seems like just yesterday we're together, but a few weeks have passed, indeed. And during that time, Lauren has really gotten a lot of data for us that we wanted for a while. So we're going to dive into that. And like Cindy said, we want to run through it. Basically, we came up with some guiding principles that we sent out the other day that we thought would help, based on what we're hearing from you, guide our thought process as we look over these questions. And hopefully we can get through some today, and we were even thinking maybe take a straw poll if we can get through on at least one charge. But basically, you can see we're going to overview the guiding principle and review and discuss our charge once again. I think it's really helpful in our question. Figure out how we're going to thoughts.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
See, did you want to, Cindy, fall off?
I think we lost Amy.
Can you all hear me?
Okay.
Seems like you're going in and out, Amy.
Can you hear me?
You're going in and out.
Darn it. Okay. I might have to take this outside. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's go over our guiding principles. If you do have that document in front of you.
Yes.
Okie doke. So at the end of the day, I mean, the number one thing is we want to get more people voting, more voter turnout. And so what's going to help engage that? A lot of things, but let's see. So that's the number one thing we should be thinking about as we process this. Then based on Mecklenburg County Commission Chairman and Commissioner's compensation on the new census design and recommended number and size of districts, since Charlotte has grown so much, as well as the number of at-large seats facilitating increased opportunities for citizen engagement with elected council members, and potentially, as a result, more citizen engagement in the elections.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure when we're thinking about this that we help elected officials make sure that they are well prepared for long-range decisions, knowing that well-prepared, thoughtful, and long-term strategic discussion and decision-making by city council and mayor optimal for the city, considering the length of terms, compensation, number of terms, and support staff and function. Finally, all recommendations should ultimately encourage robust interface with citizens, as we hear, work-life balance for city council and mayor, and adequate compensation and support to allow them to engage at an appropriate level with other city council members, citizens, and interest groups. So that's a lot, but
Uh-huh.
just
And you
think of
skipped one. You skipped one.
my poor eyesight. You want to read it, Janet?
Oh, it just says, and it seemed like you could have gone with the other one, but it says elected officials who are better serving, communicating, and representing citizens.
Okay. That's not in this one I sent. Okay.
Oh,
It is. Look at me.
Hmm.
I need to get my updated. But yes, I mean, I definitely heard that from you, you know, and say everybody that we want a little more interaction. So we'll be looking at again, our charge is, let's remind ourselves of that. Mayor and city council terms of office, including the length of terms as well as the method of implementation. 2, mayor and city council, full or part-time positions and related compensation. 3, updated policy guidelines and principles for city council redistricting resulting from the results of the 2020 census. So, with that, Cindy? Cindy?
Sorry, I was muted. So I think Lauren wanted to walk us through, maybe not. Maybe we're just going to go straight into this.
I think we are. Lauren? Is she back?
She's
Okay.
there. She's unmuted.
I think, you know.
Do you want to go to the data?
Well, let's ask the committee. Has everybody had a chance to look at this data? If
Does everyone have access to the
Right.
OneDrive?
Yes, I was. This is Liz on the phone.
New
Okay.
data coming in. When did it come? Was it just this week?
It's been the past 2 weeks, so I would say the last one was updated last week. It's the link on the OneDrive. So everyone's okay on that?
now I'm looking at, I got this, I'm looking at this one, email that I got from Amy on the 19th. And that's where I was looking at the guiding principle, the one that was.
That's what we sent out, yeah.
Okay, okay. And the link was attached to that email, I think, correct?
Yeah, we had that, and then we had,
And I have not had a chance to go through any other data that was on that link besides what we have, what we got before. And we kind of talked about some of that data during our last meeting. So is there some new data that was in that OneDrive, Lauren?
Yeah, so we'll go over that. We can go ahead and go to that now.
yeah, that would be great, I think.
So, but just show me a thumbs up that everyone has access to that OneDrive. And if not, I can tell you how to get there.
Got it. Mhm.
Okay, cool. Thanks. So last time there were a few questions. Some were on, so what are the roles of boards in North Carolina? What are the roles of our mayor and city council? And then also we wanted to do a deeper dive into comparing the county to the city. So in the next few slides, we'll talk about the governing board and also comparing the county and the city in compensation, benefits, and support staff. And then after that, I have like a slide on the city budget, and it's just a short budget exercise. So does everyone have the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to share my screen, but I still don't think I can.
Crystal, are you still on?
I am.
Can you help Lauren share her screen?
Yes. Let me shift you. Hold on a second. Just
Thank you.
All right. Your screen. Is on your screen now?
No, but you're on her.
Okay, now I can. Now?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, you see the presentation?
Yes.
I'm gonna leave. Okay, great.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna leave it this way because if I make it bigger, I won't be able to see you guys. Okay. Let's go. So again, all of this information is in more detail on the OneDrive, and it's just organized by number, and it's pretty easy to sort through. But if you have any problems, just let me know. What are the roles of North Carolina governing boards? The UNC School of Government creates a lot of wonderful materials on the OneDrive. There's a chapter within their county and city governing boards pamphlet on what mayors and city council do. North Carolina mayors have very few formal powers. Their powers include presiding over governing board meetings. They vote to break ties at those meetings, and they sign documents on behalf of the city. During council meetings, you'll often see Mayor Lyles sign proclamations and other things of that form. It is common for city council to delegate to the mayor responsibilities such as working with the clerk to create council agendas. Within our city, strategy and budget actually creates the agenda, so the mayor will work with the manager's office in strategy and budget to create those agendas. Mayors also represent the city on regional advisory boards like the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, and they serve as the primary contact for local media. Most powers for the mayor are stated within the North Carolina statutes, and then they come by action of the particular mayor's city council or by the mayor's own political stature within the community. Now, North Carolina governing boards, county or city's governing board really holds the ultimate authority to act for the local government. This is where the local government's power truly is. They can decide city services, they can establish fiscal policy by adopting the annual budget ordinance, they can levy taxes. They do so within the council agenda at meetings. They can decide administrative matters, which means like entering into contracts, buying or selling property, awarding bids, and that. And then one thing which Patrick could talk more about is in order to be effective or to promote policy, they have to act as a collective body. And they can only act as a collective body when properly convened. And this is outlined in like North Carolina open meetings law. There has to be so many of them there. It has to be properly advertised and stuff of the sort. Again, on the OneDrive, this chapter is attachment 7, and it digs in more to the governing boards and the mayor's responsibilities and expectations. Okay. Now we're looking at comparing the city to the county. So let's look at compensation. And well, first we'll look at districts. So the city of Charlotte has 11 council members, 4 at-large members, and 7 districts and 1 mayor. The 7 districts, you can see the population outline. Everyone can see the screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as of, these numbers are outlined on our council districting tools. I would imagine they were updated within the past 2 years. But if we look going forward, in 2019, the census.gov estimated Charlotte's population to be around 855,500, and that's an approximate estimation. And with that, that's about a 21% growth from the census in 2010. And if you're also looking at keeping these 7 districts, that would mean if we're keeping them even, that about 126,000 residents would be within each district if we're looking at a population of around 185,000. And then we look at the county, and you'll see that they have 9 members on their board. They have 3 at-large and 6 district representatives, and you can see their population breakdown there. Okay, we'll move on to compensation. For the mayor and city council for FY20, this is on the OneDrive as well. The mayor's salary was $27,196. This is her base salary. City council salary was $21,015. salary and expenses are paid once a month on the fourth Friday of the month. Different than other employees. Employees get paid once a week. And then,
Excuse me, Lauren.
yeah.
Can I ask if we all can mute while you're talking to maybe cut down on a little bit of the distraction? And maybe.
Okay. And then if we're looking at total compensation, you can see the breakdown of the allowances. The total annual mayor compensation is $45,096, and the total city council annual compensation is $33,915, and that's with allowances. And then we can look at the county. So for FY20, the chairman's salary was $38,491, and the commissioner's base salary was $30,791. Commissioner Cotham decided not to take a raise, so that is her current salary. With annual allowances, the chairman's total salary is $57,720, and the commissioner's total salary is $50,020, and below is Commissioner Cotham's salary. And you can see the allowances outlined there. So that's compensation. Let's look at benefits. The benefits for the county and the city are fairly similar. For mayor and city council, it tells how much on the document in the OneDrive, it tells how much or what the city fully funds and what the city offers, but council members have to pay for. And all these are elected. So council members can get medical, they can use the on-site fitness center, they can have access to the employee assistance program, they can get dental, vision, all through the city. And then again, how much they have to contribute is on that OneDrive document. The only real difference between council and employees is that by state law, council cannot participate in the North Carolina state retirement. And that means they can also, they're ineligible to participate with the city's 401k program, but they can opt for the 457 plan. And then again, the counties is very similar. Okay. Next, we'll look at support staff. For the city of Charlotte, mayor and city council support staff, they have 8 dedicated support staff housed in the Office of Constituent Services right now. And there are 3 levels of salary ranges. They're hired at the associate level, the specialist level, or the senior level. And the average salary for these 8 positions, and it's not that big of a range, it's from like 57 to 77, but the average salary is $64,137. And the essential functions are, they have to manage the schedules, travel, and meetings of our council members and mayor. They receive and screen visitors and calls. They review and determine the priority of and route assigned incoming correspondence, including calls, emails, letters, and invitations, and then they respond. And then they complete special projects and additional administrative support assignments. I reached out to the manager of OCS, and depending, so the receptionist receives around 35 to 50 calls a day, and then about 20 emails a day. And then the dedicated support staff receive anywhere between, I think it was an average of 1 to 30 calls a day, but about 50 to 100 emails a day. And then, and I specifically asked emails from constituents. So that's 50 to 100 emails from constituents a day. So looking at Mecklenburg County, they have 2 fully dedicated staff under the position title Board Support Assistant. And then also just to note, they also work closely with the county clerk's office, which the city does as well, but it seems like the county clerk's office does a little bit more as far as support. Like the Office of Constituent Services orders meals for the city, but here the clerk the clerk's office does that, and they support ad hoc committee related advisory boards, and they do the agenda creation and distribution, and they're organizing remote meetings. So the clerk's office in the county is doing a lot to support the board. And then the salary range for these 2 fully dedicated staff is anywhere between they can start off $36,344 to $63,602, but the 80% market rate was at $47,000. And the essential functions for this position are to provide administrative support, to prepare correspondence, receive visitors, and schedule meetings. And the only difference that I really saw in the job descriptions is that these 2 support staff members are required to attend all BOCC meetings. So they're required to attend all board meetings and take minutes as well, along with the clerk.
Lauren, can we ask questions, or you want us to wait till the end?
It's up to the chairs. It's fine.
Do y'all want us to wait till the end, or can I ask a question about this slide?
You can ask a question about this slide.
Okay, a quick question. So with there being 2 fully dedicated staff, and then the salary range is 36 to 63. Now, does that mean that one of them is getting around 36,000 and the other one?
No, I would imagine they're probably around 80% market rate, which is 47,000.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just a salary range.
And how did you calculate the salary range? So that wasn't based on what they were actually getting, is that?
So this is, sorry, you can go ahead.
It's the job description range. So for that job description, the range can be from the low end to the high end. And I think Lauren just said she expects them to be at 80% of the high end.
Okay, so it's based on the salary, the job description, not necessarily on the actual salaries that they are receiving.
Correct.
Yes.
That the county wouldn't want to share with us.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But our salaries are all public. I would just have to find out their names.
I do have a question
Yes.
before we leave this slide. This is Sam Smith. So with the city, well, Amy, or is it okay if I ask my question, Amy or Sandy?
Yeah.
Sure, thank you. So with the city, on the last slide, you said that the city has 8 support staff. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so the city has 8 support staff and the county has 2 support staff. Why is there such a big difference considering that the county has more people than the city? Is there a reason why, or?
I think you could end up looking at phone calls, email, correspondence. Also, there's 9 Board of County Commissioners and there's 11 City Council members. It also depends on the services the county offers versus the services the city offers and where the public interest is. But that's just this is it's typical for a council manager form of government to have a decent size of dedicated support staff to council and the mayor.
Sam, one of the things might be is that the majority of rezonings occur inside the city boundaries because there's almost no unincorporated area left in the county that's not in one of the towns or in the city. And that is where you get a lot of correspondence from constituents, land use planning and rezonings. Does that make sense?
Okay, that helps. Yeah, it does. It does. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren, for taking one.
Okay. So now we're just going to take a look at the city's budget, and I'm just going to show a quick comparison of what mayor and council compensations look like for governments with city manager form of government, with manager council form of government. Okay, so if you look at the adopted FY 2021 budget, we adopted a $2.55 billion budget net of transfers. And just so you know what that means, net of transfers means that it's where the money originated. So for example, we have services within the city, like the city attorney's office, that provide services to other departments, and they charge those departments for those services. This is not taking into consideration those interdepartmental charges. And then if you look, most of those internal services are funded through the general fund, which net of transfers is 662 million. But then if we go down, we have a breakdown of the general fund by department, and this is not net of transfers. This is what the departments actually receive. And I just wanted to show you this before we go into this comparison, just so you have an idea of where city money and city services. And then our budget is accessible via the city website on the budget page. So looking at this comparison, I looked at peer cities with council manager forms of government and what percentage of council, I'd only looked at council because mayor would have just been a repetitive exercise, but what percentage of council salary or board salary was, what that percentage was of the general fund budget. So in our second column, we have general fund budgets. And then in our third column, we have what we have for the total compensation for city council or a board. And then in the next column, we're looking at how many board members or council members there are within these municipalities. And then we get the total amount. And then in the next to last column, you see what percent that is of the total general fund. So you can see where where the city of Charlotte compares to other cities with our similar form of government and how we pay our council. And then just to note, you can see what cities have at-large members and what do not on the notes section. And then what we're looking at, you guys also asked to do a compensation survey on dedicated support staff and support staff responsibilities across our peer cities and large North Carolina cities. HR is working on that right now. They're going to have it by August the 3rd. So we'll get a more comprehensive study of what other cities look like as far as support staff. And then there was also a question on the historical data document that was provided and what the discrepancy was in council and mayor salary from FY15 to FY16. When we went back to look at that, it was basically just a change that they had included FICA and health insurance in FY16 and didn't in the previous years. But we're going to do, HR is working on a complete overview of that, and they're going to do a new historical data sheet on council compensation. And that will also be, and we're going to go back until 2002, and that'll also be done by August 3rd. We're working on that right now.
Lauren, this is Cece. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
You went too fast with the city budget. I have a question.
Okay.
The majority is on the general fund. We have 26%. And then the shallow water is 22.6%. That means the expense for shallow water or what they projected every year.
So this is just their budget. So not necessarily, so a budget is like revenue equals expenses.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's how much they receive and how much they spend or can spend. And it's an enterprise fund, so most of their revenues are generated from utilities and fees to residents.
Okay. 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 That was my question. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then lastly, like what other information, what other future data you guys want. If conversation stems from the questions up at the top that we can go back to, like just let me know and we'll work to get that.
Lauren, I've had a chance to go through, I think, every bit of this. And I think we've got pretty much all the information we could want, but I'm not telling people not to ask questions. I'm saying you might have been supplied it. So please, before the next meeting, take an opportunity to really go through it, because it's a lot of comparative information and there are a lot of charts. I found that I had to go from one chart and sort of synthesize the data on that chart and then see how it impacted other things we were looking at as well.
And if you want to see anything in a different format, we can also reorganize it if it's helpful.
Any more questions on this? And we'll go back to our work for today.
I just wanted to make sure that everybody has the link for the OneDrive, because that really does have a lot of this, a lot of what Lauren just went through. It broken down into data points, and very helpful if you want to go back to it. And I think that's since we last talked. So it's very helpful.
Lauren, can you scroll down to the next slide, slide 7? Yeah, those are the questions that that actually Amy did a lot of, almost all of this that Amy came up with, and that we should begin to start talking about and seeing if we can get to answers. Amy, do you want to lead that off?
What side? No.
Oh, okay. Well, here we are. Just looking at the OneDrive. So really, we know one of our first charges are, should City Council move from a 2-year to a 4-year? And, you know, there are advantages and disadvantages.
Amy, you're breaking up. Amy, you're breaking up.
Yeah, one of the things that that we found,
For example, 2
I've been
years.
on, is that
Hold on, Janice. Let's get Amy squared away. Amy, we can't hear you. Try again.
At all?
I think I can help. On several other Zoom meetings I've been on, what we found is that when, if everybody else was muted when one person was talking, it was less of that breaking up. So if you all want to try that and see if that helps Amy come through a little clearer.
Thank you, Janice. We'll see. Can you hear me now? Yes, no? Okay. So we need to discuss the advantages and disadvantages between 2 years and 4 years. And what we'd like to do is kind of get everyone's perspective about what they're thinking. Do we want people to continue on 2 years and everything's good, or do we need to look at a change? And what does that mean? Has anybody at this point, raise your hand if you have serious feelings one way or the other on them. Okay, Janice.
Wait, Amy, can you repeat your question? You broke up right in the middle of it.
Basically, I might need to move if I'm getting back. I might need to move outside because of wireless. But what are the advantages and disadvantages of the current 2-year terms? What are the advantages and disadvantages of moving to a 4-year term? And my question was, does anybody on the first one want to talk about the advantages and disadvantages they see of the 2-year term?
Yeah, I have always, I've always been kind of surprised. This is Janice talking, Janice Robinson for the recording. I've been surprised that the city council was on a 2-year term. It seems to me that, I mean, once elected, especially when you are a new city council member, you are elected, and really the first year, you're just getting acclimated to the job itself and to everything that you need to learn and so forth. And then the second year, you got to get ready to start running for office again. So I just, and as I guess I'm sort of biased towards thinking that, man, it should be at least a 4-year term. And for that reason, also too, because it's the role is to do some strategic planning. It's hard to do strategic planning on a 2-year interval. I guess if I'm thinking, if I got a plan for just a city of this size, and to be thinking kind of long term of what I think needs to happen, and I know I got to run for re-election in the next year and so forth. I just think that would be very difficult to be able to have some space to really do a lot of good strategic planning and thinking and processing without having the pressure of, oh, next year I got to start all over again, you know, and I've only had 1 year. My first year, I've just finally, hopefully gotten acclimated to the job itself. And so I'm kind of biased towards this whole, against a whole 2-year term to start with. I'll just, in full disclosure.
Okay, Eleanor.
Sam also has his hand up too. And Liz Weiner has
Okay.
chatted in.
Okay. Sam?
Yeah, thank you. So I definitely want to echo everything that Janice said. Actually, very verbatim to what I was gonna share. I really don't see the advantage in a 2-year term because we're truthfully not being thoughtful of our elected official one at a time. This is not a 2-year term, and this is a full-time job for them. This is a 2-year term, and it's a part-time job, but they're doing it full-time in addition to having a full-time position. So I really don't see the true advantages of a 2-year term. And again, I echo Janice that I am also biased to move in, or at least recommending that our council members go to a 4-year term to give them enough time that first year to kind of get acclimated to the role, and then the next 2 to 3 years, taking that time to truly do their work and push their agenda and the policies that make sense for their district, for their respective districts, or for our large member for the city as a whole. So I just want to just echo that and say, and let Janice, I'm definitely support of her thoughts and what she shared about that. So thank you.
Is anybody opposed to a 4-year term? Because I think a lot of people seem to be heading that way. Is anybody opposed to a 4-year term?
I don't know that I'm opposed particularly, but you know, another perspective could be when we have 2-year terms, it definitely allows more people to get involved with city council as a process. I can see where there's a lot of value in a 4-year term for the elected official, but you know, also from a 2-year perspective, if someone gets in there and doesn't like it or isn't successful, that allows the community to elect somebody else in 2 years. So not that I'm like really committed to either direction, but that's something to kind of think about or consider.
You know, I was thinking about it as well. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I would support the 4-year term as well. The only other advantage I can see to the 2-year term would be for people who own their own businesses. They could only be gone for 2 years. It would be a part-time thing, so they could still run their businesses with support from maybe a business partner or someone else. Being gone for 4 years, especially if it's a full-time job, would make that more difficult. But I do agree that, yeah, after talking to the people on city council that I've talked to, running for office, winning the election, getting organized, and then immediately running again, you almost have to be elected twice to begin to understand what you're doing and all the nuances of what you're doing. And it's running for office is not a cheap thing. That's a pretty expensive proposition. So I agree with Janice. Janice has the idea. I would definitely support 4-year terms.
I have a question. Is it an look at other year terms? I come from a nonprofit and a church background where most of those boards are on a 3-year term, and kind of the thought behind that is you have a year to learn, a year to lead, and a year to teach. And when I think about that translating over into city council, you have a year to learn, a year that you're doing, and before you go into a year of running again. I may be mucking up the water too much by throwing another option in.
Eleanor, I think one of the reasons it's in 2 or 4 is because of the normal election cycle. Does that make sense? Because otherwise, you'd get elected in one on an even year, and then on your 3 years you get elected on an odd year, which is kind of confusing, I think, to citizens in general. And it is one of our next questions, is whether we want to remain in the odd year. And let me say a little bit about that. So the odd year means that city council does not run on the same cycle with county commission or the state house. So, the legislature. And it's not being in the odd year, you're not on a presidential election cycle. I will admit I have a bias to liking the odd year because I think people in Charlotte always get confused between city council and county commission. I think if they were running in the same years, it would even be more confusing.
This is Christy Long. I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get some data on whether city council members actually rerun after a 2-year term? And the reason that data would be important to me is I think it would provide some level of facts behind a recommendation for 4 years. If we see that people actually are running every 2 years, then that would support, at least my position is that it should be 4 years, but I'd like to see that data.
So Christy, I can tell you that almost everybody that runs for their first term runs for at least a second term. There are some exceptions, and sometimes they're due to people moving or other health reasons, but I'm sure Lauren can get us that, but it is very standard for council members to serve between 4 and 8 years. Somewhere in that time frame is what you usually see.
Thanks. And Lauren, when you pull that data together, could you also indicate for us whether people are actually winning their reelection bid?
Most incumbents win, Christy.
Well, that's even more factual support for a 4-year term. It saves money on the campaign, but also saves money that we spend at the staffing the election activities.
Yeah, there's a cost to election activities. I wonder, just a curious question for y'all to put in the hopper and think about. I'm inclined to go, this is Cindy, for 4-year terms. I also, though, if we did that, I'm inclined to consider 2-term limit. So in other words, 8 years of service.
Hey Sam, this is Sam. I actually have my hand raised to share that. I support the 4-year term for sure, but I do believe that there should be some form of term limit. I forgot who made that. I think it was Kristen who made a comment about them running every 2 years, and I think giving them a 2-term limit that will help the voters to make a decision at that time. And at that point you can vote for someone new, and you don't necessarily have to vote for that same person again. if they're not doing a good job. So I definitely support the 2-term 4-year limit.
I totally agree. This is Cici. Agree with Cindy. Serving 2 terms of 4 years is enough for a person, and that will give them chance for other candidates, other people in the community to get involved as well.
So before we discuss term limits, I just wanted to express a thought about 2-year terms versus 4-year terms. I certainly understand the argument for 4-year terms. And it's interesting because if you look at what happened in Gaston County, there are several towns that have recently gone to 4-year terms, and it was barely a blip on the radar. It didn't require a vote. There weren't a lot of public speakers at the meetings. They just approved it. Concern. My thought, though, in Mecklenburg and with the city council is this come up several times, and a bipartisan group of officials and also voters have not supported it. In 2011, former mayors Richard Vinroot essentially said, there's no need for the change. It ain't broke, so why fix it? There were previous votes in, I think, 85 and 92. And then in 2015, the county commissioners proposed this, and it was rejected by a 2-to-1 margin. So I can certainly understand the rationale for 4-year terms. I just don't feel like, I feel like the voters have spoken, and so have the bipartisan groups of officials.
So, so Peter, that was in 2015. You said the county council was against it. Is that what you said?
No, the county commissioners put it up for a vote that they wanted to. Their thought was, can we extend our terms from 2 years to 4 years? And it was rejected by voters by a 2-to-1 margin. So that's where my concern is. The voters have spoken, and if you look to it, the bipartisan group of leaders.
That was a long time ago, though, Peter. I hate to say that, but 2011, the city has significantly grown since then, and I think the job is just a bigger job.
For sure.
Yeah, but I think Peter's talking.
And also,
2015 is when the county commissioners voted, right?
Well, it was put to a vote by the county commissioners, but the Mecklenburg County voters weighed in.
Right, which that, to me, that's a long time away too, because we're now, that's about 5 years ago. And things have changed some too. And then 2011 was when the last, I guess, advisory committee voted to not change it. I think it's worth kind of exploring, 2020 again. And I don't know if it would be where it would have to be a vote placed before the voters, or would this be where the council themselves would vote on it?
We have to make a recommendation on that. It could be the council just votes on it, or it can we can recommend that it go to a vote. So it could go either way.
Based on our recommendations.
Right.
Okay.
And Cindy.
Yeah, on the voter side, I think there was a lot of lack of education because I do remember that 2015 county commissioner one, and I don't think the voters were truly educated on the advantages and disadvantages, kind of like what we're talking about a 2-year term and a 4-year term. So if I'm a voter that's traditionally used to just voting on something just because it's what I'm comfortable with, that's what I'm going to do. But if there are education around it where you list the advantages and disadvantages, I think you may get more voters who will be more in tune to vote either way on it. So.
And they weren't asking for term limits, and I think that would give voters comfort as well.
So Pete, are you concerned also that the voters or the citizens aren't involved in this process right now? Or do you want, because we're planning on recording this and sharing the video on the city's social media channels.
Yeah, tell me if I understand correctly, but the council could make a recommendation, right? Or they could vote on it, but it would take 5,000 signatures to a ballot. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about that. Cindy, do you know?
I don't know. Patrick, are you on?
I have to remember to unmute myself. The council, according to the statute, the council does have the ability to simply do it themselves. or there could be a ballot initiative, either citizen sponsored, or the council could simply refer it to a ballot initiative as well. And that's what I think you're referring to back in 2015 when the county put it out to an initiative. And I know in 2019, when it was coming on board, the city council was having that discussion about whether to do it themselves or to put it out to a voter referendum. And I think they struggled with that, given the number of times they put it out to a voter referendum before. I think the council was pretty evenly split in terms of whether, if they were going to do anything, whether it should be the will of the voters or the will of the elected representatives.
I've got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kristen.
Yeah, so my thought was, is there anything that says that at large and districts have to have the same terms? Could there possibly be a two worlds here where one has a 4-year term and the other has a 2-year term? I don't know what the advantages or disadvantages of at large versus district, but is that a way to kind of compromise and see how that would go?
I think it adds to the confusion for.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything, I haven't seen anything like that contemplated in the statutes. And I don't know, other than I know certain mayors in certain communities. I know in Durham, the mayor has a 2-year term, and but all the council members have 4-year terms. But I've not seen, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, I just haven't seen a situation where council members have different length of terms, and I certainly haven't seen any statutory authority for that.
Okay.
This is Janice. I do want to go on record that whereas I support and would like to see a 4-year term, but I do want to definitely would like to see the 2-term limit. I'm a big believer in term limits. That's another one of my biases. So I would see if we went to 4 years, then definitely a 2-term limit.
So who sees a 2-year term limit as a disadvantage? Or in other words, who is against 2-year terms? Putting a 2-year, if we went with a 4-year term, would we all agree we want a 2-year term limit or 2 term limits?
I don't
Are
mean
we
to
raising our hands to vote?
Yeah, and forgive me, I don't mean to keep being the dissenter, but I think there's some benefits in having longevity on the council. People who have been veterans, who have served their community for several years. And if there's questions about their performance, then the voters can vote for the other candidate every 2 years. So that's just me, but I wouldn't support the term limits.
This is Liz. The only thing I would say that I've learned from sitting on boards and things like that was that I like the idea of the term limits for the reason, I guess maybe that you don't like it, that I think it gives an opportunity to people who wouldn't normally be able to apply. And also sometimes the incumbents end up becoming, it ends up being, right, Cindy, you end up most incumbents win. And so It's very difficult to unseat an incumbent. So I think the ability, because our city's getting younger and changing, I like the 4-year with the term limits for the reasons of giving people opportunity. That's how I look at it. But again, just a thought.
Well, we haven't taken
thinking about term limits, we're not talking about having term limits on 2-year terms, right?
No.
Because having a term limit, that's, you just barely get in, and have to get out. I would support it definitely on 4-year, but I wouldn't support it on 2-year.
I agree. What I was going to say, I've been writing down what people say, and it appears that we currently have a majority consensus around 4-year terms with 2-term limits.
This is Brandon Pierce. I can't vote with the hand thing because I'm on the phone. I would not be in favor of the term limits, but that's just my vote.
What about 4-year terms, Brandon?
4-year terms for sure, but I think term limits are really restrictive. I get that they're a check and balance, but yeah, I'm just not a fan of term limits. I think the voters can decide that.
Okay. Anybody who's not weighed in?
This is Christy Long. I'm in favor of the 4-year term, but the term limit, I need to see, I need to look at the data to evaluate what some of our peer cities are doing. So I am right now not for or against. I need more time to evaluate
You have
the data.
that in on the OneDrive. You have that data.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And the other thing I would say, though, I think you asked Lauren for the history in Charlotte of how long people have served, how many terms.
Yes.
And I think that will also show you that people tend to stay more than one term of the 2-year terms, and many stay 6 to 8 years or more. There have been some people that have stayed a very long time, and just from the outside, sometimes it is very difficult to unseat an incumbent, particularly in a district. So I think some people might have stayed too long at times. I don't think I was one of them. I left at 8 years, but I was, yeah. So you'll see when you get some of that background, and you can kind of weigh in on what you think about that. So I think that'll be great, Lauren, if you can supply that to the committee. Okay.
I was just going to say, I'm kind of a neutral on that data as well. My original gut was I do term limits, but then I also agree that it's the voter's choice to limit. And I think there are some advantages to longevity. So I'd love to see kind of what peer cities have, and then also it'll be interesting to see what the history of council in Charlotte is.
Okay. Lauren, can you tell them what page on the, I'm trying to look for page numbers, I don't see them, are our peer cities
I think it's
length
page
of
3.
terms?
I found
Okay.
it on page 3 is where I found it in the
Okay,
documents.
Okay, so
It says
that's where
cities
y'all
with
can
2
find that.
Yeah, it's all there. It says city with 2-year
Matter of
terms,
fact-
and then North Carolina cities, towns, and Mecklenburg County, and it compares to North Carolina larger. And almost
Okay.
everybody has 4-year terms.
Amy, you're breaking up.
I know, I'm running out.
If you go to attachment 5 actually has the North Carolina cities, if that's what Christy wanted to know, how we compare to the North Carolina cities, and all of those cities have no term limits. Some of them are 4- and 2-year terms, but none of those have term limits. We can blaze a trail. Yes, that one. Oh, that was
Who's
it.
ever in control, if you could zoom in for us, please. It's hard to see.
Oh, just so you know, actually it says 8 cities have term limits. Janice says 8 cities have term limits.
Now, is that the ones compared to this across the nation? But
no, it says cities with 4-year terms. And 6 cities, they all have term limits. 3 cities are county, okay. Yeah, they all have term limits.
On this slide here, these are the North Carolina cities.
Okay, let me take a look.
It says term limits, it says no limit on the term limits there. So these are the North Carolina cities.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, the other cities across the nation.
No, North Carolina cities, towns, and Mecklenburg County councils in 6 cities operate under 4-year. I'm just reading it.
Yeah, and none of those have term limits.
Yeah, they do. It says councils in 6 cities operate under 4-year terms.
Can I go back to that slide?
Those are terms, not term limits.
Not term limits. Thank you.
Yeah, those are terms.
Thanks.
And just to be clear for the group, you would need special legislation to do term limits in North Carolina. That's why you don't have any that have term limits.
Oh, thank you.
That there is no authority to do that in the existing statutes, so you would need special legislative authority to do term limits.
Oh, can you repeat that? I couldn't hear him. I could barely hear him.
I'm sorry. In North Carolina, there are no term limits. Local governments don't have the authority to have term limits on their elected officials.
Okay.
So if you are going to do that, you would need special legislation.
Oh, okay. 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 So am I looking at this incorrectly, Lauren? Because where it says that term limit column there, and it has no limit up under all of those. Is that
Janice, those are North Carolina cities, and there aren't term
Correct.
limits unless you ask for special legislation. If you look at our peer cities, the majority of those do have term limits.
right? Well, that's exactly what I was saying, that the North Carolina cities did not have any term limits.
But that's because you're not allowed to in North Carolina. It's because North Carolina law does not allow us to have them. Correct, Patrick?
Yes, that's correct.
So if we recommend limits, that would have to go to the General Assembly, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Here's our comparable cities, and you can see that many of them have term limits. Matter of fact, I think there's a number at the bottom of that page. Anyway.
So even if we recommend the 4-year term, then unless the legislature votes for term limits, then it would be unlimited.
Yes, exactly.
Well, can we ask the legislature to allow term limits? Can we?
Yes, you can, but that doesn't mean they'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if enough cities were interested, could we get a majority vote?
So it is possible to get local legislation, and I'd have to double check that to see if this is something that they would allow for a local government, like a single government to do, as opposed to statewide legislation. I'll have to double check that, but I think you could simply ask for Charlotte-specific legislation to allow the city of Charlotte, as opposed to the entire state. And ultimately, the General Assembly would still make that decision if, in fact, that is a category of decisions that can be made at the local level. I'll check into that for you, just so you don't go too far down the road of term limits. So you'll at least know that if you're going to do it, it has to be a statewide thing. But if there's a way to make it a Charlotte-specific thing, that may change your thoughts on going forward. Because I think it would be much more difficult if it was something that applied to every community.
Thank you, Patrick.
Patrick, is it still the same that if you want to introduce a local bill, you pretty much have to have the entire Charlotte delegation on board?
Yeah, that's one of the unwritten rules.
Yeah.
But it's still out there.
Okay. Okay, so we've sort of, what I hear us saying is right now, we need to know more about term limits. The majority may still want 4-year terms, depending on what term limits happen. Is that correct? I think so.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so the next one is whether the next question on our list was, should the current election cycle remain odd years or move to even years? And I've already made my short pitch of why to stay on odd years.
What else would be the reason to move it? I hear what you're saying, and I like what the rationale that you gave. I'm in agreement with. It's confusing enough.
It is. I would say that probably somebody would say that in the even years, you tend to have, not always, in the presidential years, every 4 years, you tend to have a larger turnout.
Oh, okay, okay.
So that's the advantage to even years. The disadvantage to me is, one, the confusion between the city and county. And number two, then you're in a long list, starting at the presidential race every 4 years, at the legislative and congressional races every 2 years. You just got a lot of more people getting elected, all the officers of state. So sometimes the down ballot races don't get a lot of attention. When you're in an odd year, then the city council race gets a lot of attention, the mayor and city council races, which I think is good.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. I would like to see it remain in the odd year.
I believe they should stay the way they are, odd years for city council and even for county commission. It is confusing enough for people to know who they're voting for or who they're electing,
I agree. I'd like to keep it the odd years. I think in a presidential election, it's too easy for people to just go straight ticket. And I'd rather have people, even though we get lower turnout in the odd years, I'd rather have the people who are more informed, who study it more carefully, how they're going to vote. And there's going to be an election anyhow in those odd years. If it's not city council, there's an election on school board members, on different bonds.
Right.
As if we're keeping the polling unnecessarily.
Anybody else want to weigh in? So if you're not comfortable with staying at odd years, speak now. Okay.
Move on.
Great. The next one is the staggered year model, where some members of the body are up for re-election in odd years and others are, I'm not sure what this says. Oh, so it's like the school board. The school board, the at-large members run 1 year. So it's actually, I don't even know what it is because I'm so confused by it. So I'm not a good person to speak to it. But some members run in the odd years and some members run in the even years, and it swaps every other year. That's what that question is about. I personally think we ought to stay with the whole council running, because Peter pointed out that people ought to be able to unelect people they want to unelect. And usually if there's a big head of steam about something that's not going right in the community, then everybody ought to be up at the same time, because if they're going to elect people over how they've managed something in city government, they ought to be able to unelect as many as they want.
I'll agree with that. I'm a big believer in the TISS method. Let's keep it simple.
I agree too. I agree.
One thing I just wasn't sure of, for devil's advocate, what's the argument to staggered terms?
Well, the school board used the argument that it created more consistency, because you can't fire everybody at any one moment in time, or a majority at any one moment in time. Maybe that's okay for the school board. Actually, I don't agree with it. I think it's a self-protection mechanism for elected officials. We had one time in Charlotte where on the county commission, we unelected 5 out of 9. And I think you ought to be able to do that when somebody isn't doing what the community broadly wants. But if you stagger them, you can only get half of the people 1 year, and by the next year, you might not have any steam to. But this consistency thing is what I think the school board uses. There always be some members that weren't brand new. Although I've never seen I've never seen any elected board all turn over at one time. And I've been paying attention a long time.
I think there's a small chance of that happening.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to throw in, that has come up also is, and I don't know if this is where we're going in, but should our elections be partisan or move to more nonpartisan? And that's something we should be thinking about on top of all this. Since we're considering moving to 4-year terms.
Then I'm not sure what you mean by nonpartisan. Could you explain that for me a little bit?
Well, you go, my understanding is you go vote and you're not going to see who's the Democrat, Republican. Won't have a little R by the name or a D.
So you simply don't know the political party of the people that are running?
Correct.
Engage people based.
At least it won't be on the ballot.
And that's the way the school board does it, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct, Peter.
Yeah, I don't know if that makes a big difference, considering that even though you may vote, even though they may run as a nonpartisan, I think people naturally still have a side that they choose. And if I'm a voter, I'm going to do my research to see exactly what this person's side is, and I'm going to vote for that person based on that. So I don't know if that makes that much of a difference for us to bring it to add it to part of our recommendation.
It's actually interesting if you look at the research. North Carolina cities, Charlotte and Mecklenburg County are partisan, and everywhere else is nonpartisan. And in our national peer group, there are 1, 2, 3 cities that are partisan. All the rest are nonpartisan. So overwhelmingly, most cities are nonpartisan.
So that's pretty compelling.
It is.
I agree with what Sam said. I would do my homework to see what people are and where they stand on issues. The one thing it does mean is that sometimes you get folks from either party that are sort of more in the middle, which might be a good thing. Where if you tend to vote straight ticket, you just get what you get. I don't have a dog in this fight, really, I have to admit.
Just looking at as many people who are, or as many cities who are nonpartisan, including in our state, it's worth considering. Maybe we just, I guess, does anybody feel strongly about it one way or another?
I don't. This is Janice. I don't.
Me, Sam Smith, me either.
No, I agree. Whichever, we think is best.
I tell you where it might be good. So let me. I'm thinking to talk. I'm talking to think. So bear with me. I think in districts, the way districts tend to shake out is they tend to be either a Democratic district or a Republican district. And then whoever's elected in that district can usually be elected until they don't want to be elected anymore, because the districts are not, there's only a couple districts that are what I would call competitive. If it was nonpartisan, you might get more competitive races. I'm not sure of that. That's just, like I say, I'm talking to think, just a thought.
Yeah, this is Brandon. I think it's an idea certainly worth looking into it. I'm not against it.
This is Kristen. I kind of like the idea of going nonpartisan, because then it does completely eliminate your straight ticket voters, and forces people to think about who they're voting for before they vote.
I agree.
I don't know if I agree. Political parties are created to represent values. The people that belong to those political parties are those that share the values of the party. If you're running in a district that's heavily one or the other, and you wish to disguise what your values are, that's very easy to do if you don't have to declare who you kind of thrown in with. It sort of has the overview of being a little deceptive to me. You say what you want, and then what you are comes out later.
Well, let me say this, Mimi. The majority of voters that are registering these days are registering independent, including me. And I think that's because I really don't want to be tagged as one thing or the other, because I have strong values that spread across what used to be party lines. Right now, maybe not so much, but as a general rule, I found it valuable to be an independent.
Well, I'm registered the same way, and probably for the same reasons that you know, I want to be a little bit free from one label or another label, and I do have a broad sense of the way things are. But it just worries me a little bit.
I see your point, but I just don't think today, because somebody has an R or a D next to their name, you can assume that they stand for everything that party stands for. I think sometimes even the parties don't know what they stand for. So better to judge the candidate for merits.
And the other thing is, this is also local elections. Like, we're not talking about like actual national issues. I mean, we're talking about garbage cans, sewers, road infrastructure. So it really shouldn't have that red and blue. And if I'm being honest, this is more personal than anything. I think sometimes at the local level, there is too much of that national politics. So maybe having the no partisan might, edge out some of that national politics. So.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, we can keep talking about this one. We are about 9 minutes away from the end. And the next big topic is compensation, which I really hate to start because I think we can't finish it. So why don't we think whether we have any more questions on this page of questions that are up on the screen now? Because I think we're going to need, what do you think, Amy? I think we're going to need some fair time on compensation.
Absolutely. And again, the data that's been uploaded on OneDrive will be really helpful if people can, or the committee can really go through it and compare the cities and in North Carolina, the peer cities, before we dive into this discussion.
Right.
And I don't mean to dive too deep. I just had one question that would help me thinking before the next meeting. Tell me if I'm correct. In the city of Charlotte, do employees get a cost of living raise each year?
I saw Lauren.
Yeah.
3%.
Typically, we're getting a 3% merit increase maximum.
So is there a downside to tying the city councils? If there's a cost of living increase for the other city employees, that there would be cost of living increase for the council members as well?
Well, and looking at it, that sort of looks like what they've been doing. I think the question is, Peter, is they're below. Yeah, they have. But they're below. I think what the council has said to us is they feel like for the amount of work and energy and compared to our peer cities, that their pay and compared to the county commission is that we need to do something now, a bump, and then we can do the 3%. I think that's at least what I've been hearing from council members. I don't know about other people.
So Lauren, when did that start? How long has the city council been getting the 3% increase?
It's on that one sheet.
I'll have to look. Let's see.
I'm looking for that page, Lauren.
It's been a while.
I looked at that page, Lauren, that you sent us in the packet, and this is Janice, from 2002 up until about around 2017, the mayor was getting about a raise, and also a couple of years of missing for whatever reason. But it was kind of on a track of 3%. And then one year it went down, then it went back to the 3% for the mayor. And then with the city council, with the with the city council members, they were pretty much on track. Well, they went up a big bump in between 2008 and 2009, up like 19%. So they were on track pretty much at 3% with a big increase in between 2008 and 2009.
That increase was from allowances.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then no change in 2011 and 2013, and then pretty much back on track again with about a 3 to 4%, 2014 and 2015. Another big jump in 2016.
It's because of health insurance and FICA, but they
Okay.
had health insurance prior. This is what we're correcting. They had health insurance, or they had the option of health insurance prior to FY16.
I may be reading the chart incorrectly. I don't have any problem bumping their pay because of all the hours they put in. But I'm not sure that I see the 3% increase looking at this chart. If you look at just the salary, they went from 19,810 in FY19 to 20,560. And even if you look at all the other things included, merit, health insurance, FICA, there still wasn't a 3% increase. They went from 43,031 to 43,787.
Yeah, this is like 1.5.
Yeah. So I don't think that's my question. Have there been 3% increases every year the way that there have been for the other city employees?
It appears it's a little bit different every year.
Yeah, and it appears pretty flat.
And
I
3%
think there are
is the
some jumps here and there.
maximum for employees, but this seems like it's 1.5%.
Yeah, which I don't think is what the employees receive, right?
It depends. It's a maximum of 3%. The supervisor can elect to give less.
So it's in a range, Peter, where you need your whole department to equal out to 3%, I think is how it works, Lauren. So you might have some people below and some people a little bit over.
Right.
Okay. Well, I feel like I hijacked the discussion because I know you wanted to table it. So I just wanted to throw that out.
No, that's okay, because it's good to at least get our questions on the table.
Yeah.
And I was looking at, this is Janice, and I was just looking at the salary. I wasn't looking at the total. And so just looking at the salaries, it was around, like it was kind of trending around 3%.
Well, let me say this to y'all. I've done a lot of analysis on this because I was curious. And the county commission in their benefit side gets about 19,000 plus a year, and the city council gets about 13,000 plus on the these reimbursables, the technology, auto expense line items. And then the county commission is paid, I have to pull that out now, significantly above the city council. So, yeah, the county commission is currently at a total, well, I'm going to get this wrong now. Let's see if I can get it right. City council's at 33,000. I don't know. I may not have this right. No,
you're right.
The county commission's is at 33,000, and the county commission chair gets, I guess, 45-ish, and the city, I don't know. I'll send it to y'all. I have it written down. This paper isn't clear.
City council gets 33,915, and then commissioners get a total of 1,020.
Wait, Lauren, I couldn't hear you. What did you say?
The city council members have a total compensation, including allowances, of 33,915.
Got it. Yep.
And then county commissioners have a total compensation of $50,020.
Oh, I think we should definitely. I don't understand why there's that much of a difference. Does anybody?
There's a difference in the general fund. But
why? No, I understand that. I know it's a county versus a city. I get that, but I don't know. It seems like a big difference, but okay. I think they both work the same amount of hours, I assume, unless anybody's checked that. I'm assuming they're both working similar hours.
And I heard discussion earlier.
Hey, Amy.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say, I heard discussion earlier about giving more people a chance to run. You're eliminating a lot of people from running if you keep the salary this low.
I agree.
And based on our peer cities, I think we actually ought to be considering more than where the county is, but that's just me. So
I agree with you. I always do.
I think we can talk about that. I mean, I've had a long conversation with several council members, and obviously they're lobbying for themselves in a way, but and also with the mayor. And given the amount of time they're putting in, I know for sure the mayor's job is actually more than full time. I wouldn't have her job.
Same here.
I love her to death, and I'm glad she's there. But honest to goodness, I wouldn't want that job.
I wouldn't either.
So I think this gives us a good basis to start next time on. We've put some stuff on the table, which is good. If you guys have questions, please send them our way and copy Lauren and Patrick as you look through this. And I'm really going to encourage you to spend some time on this salary stuff, both our peer cities, the local cities, and again, based on not just our budget size, but our population size and our phenomenal growth. And think about it. Because the other thing we haven't talked about, which we'll talk about when we get to redistricting, is do we want the new districts to be as large as they're going to appear to be? 125,000 people per district. That's a lot of people to have good engagement with if you're a council member. So I'm just putting that out there for folks to think about, because that's what Lauren said, is that these districts will look more like 125. And again, as I said earlier, I think the city council, you have to remember, part of the biggest part of the county's budget is the school system, and they have their own board on that, right? So county doesn't get lobbied much about school issues. The city council has land use planning, zoning, anything that's infrastructure, trolleys, streets, roads, I mean, all of that. And I think they have a lot of constituent care because of that. So I just think we ought to think carefully about how big we want districts to be so that they're manageable for people.
I think that's a really good point, Cindy. And I guess, Lauren, I don't mean to give you a research homework assignment, but I don't know if there's a way to see if it's 125,000 for each city council member. How does that compare to, say, state representatives and how many people are in their district? Because I know, if I'm not mistaken, they try to divide the state up evenly, right, and assign the districts accordingly. So I'd be curious how 125,000 compares with our state house representatives.
Yeah, who don't have a lot of constituents calling them.
Yeah, I can get that.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, though. This has been a really productive meeting.
Okay, can I ask one other question? Janice, this is Janice.
Yeah.
Are we near a vote on the moving to a 4-year term, or how will we do that? Will we be?
Do you all want to be ready to vote on that next time?
Sounds like we're ready to vote on it today, but.
Well, I think the only thing I heard we probably weren't quite ready to vote on is the partisan, nonpartisan.
Right.
Well, I think the 2-year term limit,
Yeah,
one question about.
Yeah, we're waiting for Patrick to give us some information. I can tell you that I don't know how the legislature would view this, whether positively or negatively. But you literally would need the Charlotte delegation to be mostly of a single mind on it to get it introduced.
Okay.
You're talking about for the term limits?
Yeah, term limits.
Right. Will we need to vote on those two together, as far as the 4-year term and the term limit?
No, I think we can separate them. Are people comfortable separating them?
I am. Yeah. Are you?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we may need to, just because we're waiting on more research.
Yeah. So do we want to wait for that research, or we want to vote today?
I would like to vote on the 4-year term, just to kind of progress along.
Yeah.
So Janice, you're making a motion that we vote today on 4-year terms?
I make a motion that we vote on a 4-year term limit, on a 4-year term versus the 2-year term.
Do we have a second?
Pete, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a question. The people who support 4-year terms, is that tied to the term limits, or would you support 4-year terms regardless?
Me, regardless.
Yeah, good question. Good question, Peter, because that's what I was thinking too. So I support the 4-year term only if we can have some term limits to it, because if you go 4 years and someone get in office and stay there for 30 years, that defeats the purpose. So that's a good point, Peter. I support the 4-year term only if we can get it pushed.
Why don't we wait for the data? Because I think the data that I think either Christy or Eleanor asked for about how often people run for multiple terms, how many, it gives us a sense of what's already going on. So why don't we wait for that and vote next time?
And can I just throw an idea out there?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to throw an idea out there. Maybe if we did term limits, maybe it's consecutive term limits. So perhaps like you can only have, 2 consecutive terms, then you need to take a seat and then you could, run again. I feel like one of the offices of North Carolina does that already. I can't remember which one, but
the governor.
Just have a consecutive, the governor there.
Mm-hmm. I think all the state offices, you can only run for 2 terms, but then you can take time off and come back. Governor Hunt did that, just FYI.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, something like that might be a fair compromise.
But what I
So if we're
think
going by
various-
Robert Rules of Order, I would support Brandon's motion that he just put on the table.
But the question is that we as a Mecklenburg County, what are the chances, I'm using that word loosely, that we could even get past an initiative that we could have term limit? I mean, if the legislature isn't even going to go there, it's off the table automatically.
Mm-hmm. That's not what I feel like. I don't feel like we have the political capital in Raleigh right now to be able to get that passed.
I agree. That's why I'm asking the question. I agree. So that's my question.
Actually, right now, I think we could get it passed, but I don't think we can if the legislature changes. Longer story.
Is there anyone?
I kind of agree.
Could anyone kind of guide us who's in the legislature and give us an opinion from, the front row to see whether or not that could happen?
Patrick?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to our legislative affairs individual here in the city. He would be much better suited to sort of tell me what the forecast might be on that question. With our
Patrick, speak up a little louder, please.
I'm sorry, I'm not 100% sure where my microphone is. But we have a legislative affairs individual with the city. And I'll speak with him about that, and he can give me a forecast as to what the likelihood would be of individual legislators and what their mood might be on that question.
Thank you, Patrick. That'd be great.
Should I withdraw my motion then?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's hold it for next time. We'll do this first up next time, and then we'll go straight into compensation. How about that?
Then I withdraw my motion.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've kept you over time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Our next meeting is, I think, the 6th, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you all very much. Have a great weekend.
Everybody. Thanks, Lauren and Patrick, for pulling everything together. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks for all your work.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Cindy. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Everyone.
Take care.
Bye, guys.